My son was born looking nothing like me or his father. Both my husband David and I have round faces, but our son has an elongated face. At first, no one in the family paid much attention. However, as he grew older, something seemed off. By the time he was 3, his hair started curling and his eyes took on a slight green hue. People outside the family began whispering behind my back, speculating that I had been unfaithful, even suggesting I was involved with a foreigner. My father-in-law, Richard, the chairman of a publicly listed company with high expectations for his grandson, grew increasingly grim. If the boy wasn't his blood, what was there to say? The atmosphere at home became strange, and I had a bad feeling something was about to happen. Sure enough, one day while I was leading a meeting at the company, I was informed that Richard wanted to see me. I arrived at his office to find him with a dark expression, windows and doors tightly shut. He stared at me for a full minute before speaking in a cold, interrogative tone, as if questioning a criminal. Tell the truth, whose child is he? Father, that's a strange question. Tommy is your grandson, of course, David's and my son. Richard sneered, pulling a document from his drawer and slamming it on the table. See for yourself. I picked it up. It was a paternity test report stating clearly, Tommy was not Richard's grandson. I was stunned. I hadn't expected him to secretly take my son for a DNA test. I said, Father, paternity tests are usually done with the father, not the grandfather. How can this result be accurate? You know nothing. He snapped. Modern technology can determine lineage with precision. This morning, I took Tommy to the hospital myself. The report is clear as day, black and white. Tommy is not my grandson. Jessica, with evidence this solid, what do you have to say for yourself? I was reeling, unable to respond. He continued, starting today, you're suspended from work to reflect on your actions. I'm giving you 3 days to come clean. Without hesitation, I went to David. Honey, take a day off and bring Tommy to the hospital for a father-son DNA test. If we prove Tommy is your son, your father will have nothing to say. But before I could finish, David's face turned red, and he shouted, What's the point? His reaction told me his father had already spoken to him. I raised my voice, David, do you doubt me too? You know the truth. He shot back, slamming the door as he left. It took me a long time to calm down. The more I thought about it, the stranger it seemed. Tommy didn't resemble David or me, but Richard's behavior felt irrational. Tommy was our biological son. How could the test results be wrong? I decided to investigate. I approached David again, asking him to take Tommy for a test. He refused to listen, angrily saying the truth is clear. Why go to the hospital? It's humiliating. Unable to reason with him, I took matters into my own hands. I secretly collected a few strands of David's hair and some bodily fluids, then took Tommy to the hospital. The results came back quickly. Tommy was David's biological son. I was stunned. What was going on? Something was deeply suspicious. I immediately hired a reputable private investigator, sparing no expense for accurate results and solid evidence. 3 days later, Richard summoned me to his office again. Jessica, your deadline is up. Tell me, who is Tommy's real father? Calmly I replied, Father, I've already said it and I won't repeat myself. Seeing my defiance, he sneered, if you choose this attitude, don't blame me for being ruthless. He called David in and ordered coldly, David, take Jessica to the Civil Affairs Bureau for a divorce. Once it's done, she and her illegitimate child can leave this house. On the way to the bureau, I asked David, do you believe me or your father? My father would never lie to me, he replied. Hearing that, I decided not to show him the DNA test results. If he trusted his father so blindly, there was no point in trying. At the bureau, the staff looked at me with contempt, stamping the papers so hard it seemed they wanted to say, serves you right. For a woman, this kind of situation makes it hard to hold your head high. After the divorce, Richard fired me from the company and kicked Tommy and me out. His family's conglomerate was worth billions, but he didn't give me a cent. A few days later, the investigators' report arrived. I read every word carefully 3 times over, then stood by the window watching the willow branches sway in the spring breeze. A perfect plan began forming in my mind. Just then, my best friend Emily came to me, outraged on my behalf. "Jessica, no one knows you better than I do. You'd never cheat. I bet Tommy isn't even your child, he's probably David's from another woman." I shook my head. "Don't talk nonsense. This has nothing to do with David." "Then it's about you?" Emily scoffed. "Jessica, are you out of your mind? They kicked you out and you're still defending them? I can't let them bully you like this. I'm taking this to the internet. If the law won't deliver justice, I'll demand it for you." I knew Emily's temperament, she'd follow through. If she made a scene online, things would spiral out of control, and that wasn't the path I wanted. To stop her, I showed her the DNA test results. She froze, then after a moment her eyes lit up. "I get it. Your father-in-law's test was fake." I smiled faintly. "Why would he fake it?" My question left her speechless. She stared at me for a long time before saying, "You've figured out the whole truth." I only smiled, saying nothing. Emily continued, "I know you're planning something big. Don't worry, I won't ask, but if you need help, just say the word." After Emily left, I looked at the willows again, chuckling to myself. Richard's company being publicly listed attracted intense scrutiny. Even a small scandal drew attention. News of Tommy and me being kicked out spread quickly. People called me shameless, saying being a daughter-in-law in a wealthy family was every woman's dream, yet I dared to cheat. They labeled me despicable, worse than notorious historical figures. I took Tommy to a cramped rented room, scraping by. Acquaintances whispered behind my back when they saw me. To survive, I started selling fruit on the street, barely making ends meet. A businessman approached me saying mysteriously, "Jessica, you hold intangible assets. Why not turn them into cash? You worked at your in-laws' company, you must know trade secrets. Work with me and money will flow like water." I knew what he wanted and refused outright. When Emily heard about this, she was baffled. "Your father-in-law treated you cruelly, and you're still protecting him? I don't understand you." Some time later, I heard Richard was looking for a new daughter-in-law. This wasn't surprising, he was obsessed with grooming a successor. After forcing David to divorce me, he needed a new wife and a true grandson to fill the void. But his company's prominence meant even minor issues sparked public interest. His rivals seized on the story of him kicking me out to find a new daughter-in-law, accusing him of fabricating my infidelity to get rid of me. Some even claimed he was mentally unstable and warned against buying his company's stock to avoid losses. Furious, Richard decided to hold a press conference, inviting all the city's prominent figures and major media outlets to set the record straight. Before the event, he sent someone to find me, hoping I'd attend. I agreed immediately. "No problem, I'll be there tomorrow." The messenger was surprised by my readiness. "The chairman was worried you'd refuse. He said if you come, he'll give you $10 million to secure a future for you and your son." I pulled a small white bottle from my pocket and handed it to him. "I have a gift for the chairman. Please pass it on." "What's this?" he asked, puzzled. "Emergency medicine," I smiled. "I think the chairman will need it tomorrow." The next day, I arrived at the press conference on time. The event was grand, held in a hall seating over 1,000, packed with nearly every reporter in the city and many prominent business figures. As I entered, all eyes turned to me, filled with disdain. Someone remarked loudly, "Isn't that Jessica?" Shameless, showing her face in public. Another spat on the ground, sneering. Seeing me, Richard signaled. Two men flanked me as if guarding against my escape. One, the messenger from the previous day, whispered, "Today's a big deal. The chairman is determined. When he mentions you, don't argue. The truth is clear. Just cooperate, and he'll keep his promise of $10 million. I smiled. Thanks for the reminder. I know what to do. The press conference began. Richard took the stage, cleared his throat, and addressed the crowd. Recently, the divorce between my son and Jessica has been blown out of proportion. Some have used it to smear my company's reputation. Today, I've invited you all to clarify the truth. Family scandals shouldn't be aired, but I, Richard, am an upright man. If it's shameful, so be it, it must be said. He held up Tommy's DNA test report. This is the hospital's result. Tommy is not my grandson, not the child of Jessica and David. He is the result of Jessica's infidelity. That's why I decided they should divorce. He passed the report around. People read it and whispered, "No mistake, Richard's daughter-in-law is disgraceful. She deserves to be kicked out." Someone shouted, "Chairman Richard is remarkable, thinking to test his grandson. Not everyone could do that." The crowd agreed. Exactly. Sharp and decisive. How else could he lead a listed company? The praise made Richard beam with pride. He looked at me with contempt, as if saying, "Jessica, you didn't expect me to test the boy, did you? No matter how well you hid it, I exposed you." I remained calm. He continued, "As the company grows, training a successor is critical. The first condition is that the heir must be my blood. Otherwise, my life's work would be for nothing. Don't you agree?" The audience laughed and shouted, "Absolutely. Spot on." He moved to another topic. "Grooming a successor can't be delayed, so I must find a new daughter-in-law. I don't demand exceptional talent, but she must have impeccable character." He pointed to his wife, Linda. "This is my wife, Linda. She graduated from a prestigious foreign university, intelligent and capable, contributing greatly to the company. Above all, her character is exemplary. She's dealt with many clients, some charming men who tried to win her favor for contracts, but she always kept her boundaries. I'm not boasting, but my wife is the most virtuous woman in the world, a role model for all women." He stepped forward, kissed Linda's forehead, and looked at her affectionately. "Linda, don't you think I'm right?" I noticed that every time he mentioned her, Linda's expression was uneasy. When he kissed her, she forced a smile. "What are you doing in front of all these people?" He laughed. "Why be shy? This is the first time I've publicly praised my wife." Then he turned serious, looking at me. "Jessica, you're here today, which shows courage. But everyone must pay for their actions. Today, I'm giving you a chance. Step onto the stage, confess your mistakes, reflect on your actions, and start anew. I'll give you $10 million for you and your son's living expenses." The crowd murmured. The chairman is so generous. After all, Jessica lived with his son for years. He can't bear to see her and her son destitute. Seeing me hesitate, the man beside me whispered urgently, "Hurry up. A few words of remorse, and you'll get $10 million. It was time to reveal the truth. I walked confidently to the stage, stood before Linda, and smiled. "Though I'm divorced from David, I'll still call you mother-in-law. Don't you have anything to say?" Linda's face paled. "Jessica, I don't know what you're talking about." I moved to the center of the stage, pulled out a document, the DNA test Tommy and I had done, and held it up. "Everyone, look at this. It's the father-son DNA test for me and Tommy. Please pass it around." The report circulated, and faces turned to shock. Whispers erupted. What? The boy is David's son? His biological son? So Jessica didn't cheat? Richard's expression darkened. He snatched the report, scanned it, and sneered at me. Jessica, to cover your shame, you dare forge documents? With this attitude, don't expect a penny. I smiled. Look closely, sir. It has the hospital's red seal and the doctor's signature. Do you think such a document is easy to fake? He froze, put on his glasses and examined it. Doubt crept into his face. His assistant whispered, could the seal be fake? Richard quickly compared it to his own test report. Both had identical seals and the same doctor's signature. The truth was undeniable. Richard stood dazed. What's going on? I pulled another document from my bag and looked at him. I have another test result, concerning your privacy. Do you want it made public? The hall buzzed with curiosity. Seeing the paper, people shouted, what's it say? Read it! Richard, nervous, asked, what is it? I asked calmly, did you bring the medicine I sent yesterday? What medicine? He frowned. The messenger rushed forward, pulling out the white bottle. This one. He explained awkwardly, I was afraid you wouldn't understand, so I didn't give it to you. I took the bottle, poured out 2 yellow pills, and handed them back. Make sure the chairman takes these later. He nodded eagerly. I placed the document on the projector. Instantly, the words appeared, Richard Johnson is infertile. Below were the hospital's red seal and the doctor's signature. The hall exploded. What? Chairman Richard can't have children? Then where did David come from? Reporters excited aimed their cameras at Richard. He stood frozen as if struck by lightning. I felt satisfied. The private investigator I hired was exceptional, obtaining Richard's biological sample and completing the test in days. The money was well spent. Linda suddenly shouted, that's not true. The person in the report isn't Richard, it's someone with the same name. Richard snapped awake, eyes red, glaring at me. You're vicious, using this trick to get revenge. Linda rushed forward, slapped me, and yelled, throw this woman out. Wait, I said calmly, pulling a small paper from the projector. A string of numbers appeared, Richard's ID number. I'd covered it earlier to spare him some dignity. Linda froze, her face panicked, turning to her husband. Richard, it's a trap. Don't believe her. Richard, as if drained of strength, grabbed her collar and roared, tell me. Whose son is David? He's our son, of course. Linda trembled. He shouted, face purple. The man with the pills, understanding, clutched them tightly. Linda continued, David is your biological son, I swear. Richard turned to me, confused. Jessica, tell me what you know. I pulled out photos and projected them. They showed a man and a woman in an intimate embrace. The man was a foreigner with curly hair and green eyes. The woman was Linda. The photos were yellowed, both looked under 30. I said, everyone recognizes the woman. The man is John, an Englishman. Years ago, when Linda studied in England, she met John. They were college sweethearts, a couple. If things had gone normally, they'd have married. But then Richard appeared, young, handsome, with his own company. He fell for Linda's beauty and vowed to marry no one else. Knowing she was with John, he convinced her that John was a poor man who'd only bring her hardship. With him, with a company about to go public, she'd live in luxury. I turned to Linda. At first, you refused, but for some reason, you agreed. Only you and John know why, right? Linda paled. You're lying. Later, I realized Richard was right. I couldn't marry a foreigner, no matter how much he loved me. I had to return to my homeland. I smiled. Touching, but not quite the truth, Mother. I projected another photo, Tommy's. The crowd gasped. Tommy was the spitting image of John, curly hair, green eyes, like they were from the same mold. I continued, now everyone understands. Tommy is John's grandson. And David is John's son. You're lying. Linda jumped up. If David is John's son, why doesn't he look like him? Recessive genes, I replied. John still lives in England and you two talk monthly. Should I show the call logs? Linda's face changed. Jessica, who are you? How do you know my business? I didn't want to know, but I was forced to, I said, turning to Richard. Remember the night you returned from a business trip to England? What happened? He froze, face reddening. That was 30 years ago. Who remembers? Let me remind you, I said. After Linda accepted your proposal, you were overjoyed and went drinking at a bar. A provocative woman approached you. You couldn't resist and spent the night with her. The next morning you woke up exhausted, drained of strength. You haven't forgotten, have you? Richard sweated. Is my infertility tied to that night? Exactly, I said. You fell into John's trap. That woman was hired by him to ensure you'd never have children. Before Linda left England, John made sure she was pregnant with his child. John was calculating. He wanted his son to be raised as yours. When David had a son, Tommy, he'd be your grandson. Ultimately, your company and wealth would belong to John's lineage, while you worked for nothing. Richard screamed in agony, clutching his chest and collapsing. The man with the pills forced them into his mouth with water. Richard slowly opened his eyes and was helped up. Standing before Linda, he asked, Linda, tell me the truth. Did you know John set me up? Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. I didn't know. Truly, I didn't know John was like that. He turned to me doubtful. So what's really going on? I didn't answer directly but said to Linda, if I'm not mistaken, every time John called he stressed keeping the secret that David wasn't Richard's son. He said to wait until he perfected the soul dissolver, then he'd return to replace Richard. Your family's son and grandson would revolve around him. Richard interrupted, what's soul dissolver? In short, a poison, I replied. It causes gradual dementia and slow death, nearly undetectable. Richard roared, face purple. Why would that Englishman want to kill me? Just because I took Linda from him? He had no reason. I frowned. You're right. He had no reason. Richard grabbed Linda's collar. Why did John want to harm me? She trembled. I didn't know he was like that. I told Richard, you don't need to do this. She's just a pawn in John's plan. The hall fell silent, everyone stunned. Richard ordered, throw David out. I don't want to see him, Linda sobbed, grabbing his hand. Richard, you can't treat our son like this. He's innocent. You two, get out. Take your son. He yelled at her, then looked at me with regret. Jessica, I wronged you. If you don't mind, will you be my adopted daughter? From now on, you're Sophia Johnson, not Jessica. You're my benefactor for revealing the truth. Since I can't have children, you'll inherit the company. I said, I agree, but I have one condition. What? Don't kick David and his mother out. Why? Because Linda is a victim too, and David is completely innocent. He hesitated, then nodded. Fine, as you say. Linda, moved, grabbed my hand, tears in her eyes. I asked her, there's one thing I still don't understand. When you arranged my marriage to David, I didn't know you. Who brought you to me? Linda hesitated, glanced at Richard, and said, John. Richard roared, what else are you hiding? Spill it. Linda protested, I didn't hide anything. John gave me your photo and number, saying David had to marry you, no one else. Richard turned to me. I shook my head. I've never met John. Everything I know today came from the investigator. A week later, a man with halting Chinese invited me for coffee. I knew instantly it was John. Through him, I learned the full truth. John's father once owned a company, but due to a business conflict it became a rival to Richard's. In the corporate battle, John's father's company went bankrupt. John harbored a deep grudge against Richard. When Richard stole Linda from him, John devised a bizarre revenge, impregnating Linda so his son would be raised as Richard's and Richard's grandson would be his. If successful, Richard's company would belong to John's lineage. John said, I just wanted to reclaim what was my father's. If you hadn't investigated, this secret would have stayed buried. I don't blame you, it's fate. He continued, I have one request, will you remarry David? This has nothing to do with him. I laughed coldly. Between me and Richard, David chose to believe his father. That's enough to disappoint me. John fell silent. That fool doesn't deserve to be my son. Jessica, I won't interfere. It's your choice. I asked, was it too cruel to make Richard infertile? John shook his head. He brought it on himself. I didn't tell that woman to do anything extreme, just to test his character so Linda could see his true colors. But that night, Richard was so wild he forced her to take drastic measures. John laughed. It's all in the past. Now you're Richard's adopted daughter, the future CEO. My grandson, Tommy, will eventually inherit. My plan succeeded. With that, John turned and left.